Welcome back and thanks a lot for staying with us. In the present Nigerian society, persons with disabilities tend to experience hardship than others. Persons with disabilities face difficulties accessing adequate health services, poor education and facilities on account of adequate learning facilities, persistent stigma, discrimination and barriers to accessing basic social services and economic opportunities. So tonight I am joined by the chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Disability Matters, Honorable Bashiru Dawodu, as we focus on National Assembly and rights of people living with disabilities. Thank you so much for joining us, Honorable.
You're welcome.
Right. Let's start with laws protecting rights of people living with disabilities. How comprehensive are they?
Well, to start with, I have to especially thank you for doing this, because this public service is very important in terms of creating awareness about this particular law. The National Assembly, in one of its bright moments, passed this bill in 2018, which is the Disability Act. And in 2019, it was signed into law by President Muhammadu Buhari. So right now it's the law of the land. Well, I think to a lot of extent it is comprehensive. Are we 100% satisfied with it? No, but we're going to work with what we have right now. And what we have right now addresses the rights of persons with disabilities as well as their welfare. And in many regards, from the different sections, we know that if well implemented, should make a lot of difference in the lives of persons living with disabilities.
All right, so there are some parts of the law I would like us to talk on, and this is because of the kind of conversations across social media. One is all public organizations that to reserve at least 5% of employment opportunities for these persons. Second is, before a public structure is constructed, its plans shall be inspected by relevant authorities to ensure that the plan conforms with the building code. The building shall not be approved if the plan does not make provision for accessibility facilities in line with the building code. How well, or how would you rate implementation of this part of the law, and how can we do better?
Thank you for the question. I think it's very, very important, and I like the parts that you are highlighting, because those are really the germane areas. Apart from in Section 1 that talks about discrimination, I think in Section 2 you are talking about access. It is impossible to understand it unless you are a person living with disability, especially as physically challenged persons. That almost in their daily lives, they find it difficult to enter public buildings unlike regular folks, quote and unquote. So this law addresses that. And the significant thing about the law is that it's not just addressing the buildings or the builder. It's also focusing on the building planners and the folks that actually approve the buildings. And there are sanctions on sites. Yes, you're right that implementation has some limitation for now, because there is a moratorium of 5 years. So implementation is expected to kick off in January. And yes, how do we go about that? Well, there is a roadmap to doing that, which is a collaborative effort between the Assembly and the Executive to make sure that this comes to pass. That's in terms of the access. Now, in terms of employment, the same thing applies. That one, there's equal employment opportunity. But more importantly, that anytime there's recruitment, 5% of the employment should be reserved for persons with disability. And this also goes with sanctions and penalties. And on the earlier one I cited and this one, it actually also includes an option of imprisonment. So yes, it's going to be a challenging time to do that, but we are very much ready to carry out the implementation. Thank you for the question.
Right, so outside of these two sections I've just quoted, help us understand what the National Assembly is doing to ensure better deals for people living with disabilities.
The National Assembly is a very bright spot in this, because for decades, the community of persons with disability were trying to get laws passed, like you have the American Disability Act and the AU Act. But thank God we now have the Nigerian Disability Act. Also, remember recently President Bola Ahmed Tinubu also signed the African Charter on Disability, which we are extremely impressed about. So when you put all this together, we are able to address the welfare of the persons with disability and go towards a better trajectory. What is the Assembly doing? The National Assembly, like you know, functions by virtue of motions and bills. One regard is this bill that became the Act. Also, there are motions that can address a lot of the things that we are trying to do. For example, I have moved 3 motions since we got into the 10th Assembly. And one of the 3 of them are past the House. So those are the areas that we can actually use as instrument of implementation. For example, our very progressive leader, Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, approved the use of sign language interpreters in the chamber for the first time in the history of Nigeria. So the Assembly is very much on track in terms of making the lives of persons with disability better in our country.
Right. So President Tinubu promised to ensure inclusive governance for all segments of the society. How well do you think he has gone with this promise for people with disabilities?
Well, you know, those are part of some of the areas we're looking at, that the executive, especially the quote unquote the government, should lead the way in terms of the implementation of this. If you follow, there was a motion that I raised on that all programs of government there should be set aside for persons with disability. And the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs actually assured us that in all these programs and the ones coming up, they are setting aside 10% for persons with disability. And she also said that it's even going to be more with time. So that's a start. Now, in the areas of employment, I think we're grossly behind. We have not even started that. So one of the things we want to do is to have a lot of awareness and advocacy, because a lot of even our folks, the persons with disability, are not even aware of these rights that's in the book for them. And by the way, only about 13 states have domesticated the laws in their states, which are some of the areas we're going to look at, because we think that is very important. Because in the states, on the local level, especially when you consider the fact that most of the persons with disability actually live in the rural areas. So in the rural areas, the traditional leaders have a way of reaching out to the folks. Yes, I think this government has as part of the renewed agenda to make the lives of persons with disability better, and we are going to assist them in doing that.
All right, so, I mean, still on this, what steps do you think should be taken to ensure full implementation of this inclusion in all government agencies and parastatals?
Didn't get that, sorry.
All right, so I asked, what steps do you think should be taken to ensure full implementation of inclusion in all government agencies and parastatals?
All right, yeah, that's a good one. To start with, remember I said that the House functions by motions and bills. I think there's something in the works to pass in the House that will get the backing of legislative backing to the fact that, to what you just stated. And that is something that is as much as possible coming up soon, so that instrument can actually be used to definitely ensure that the different or the MDAs address that. And also, mind you, there's also a function of the legislature which is oversight. So in oversight, I'm sure our committee and other relevant committees are going to ask those questions, that in your 2024 budget, how well have you complied with the Disability Act? So that's another instrument that is available to us.